and her family throughout this trial?
I took part in some of the searching, and I just felt like I needed to come in and support for the family.
Those searches happened over weeks, months with friends and family. Why did you all take that initiative to get out boots on the ground and search when all of this came out last year?
Unfortunately, the police weren't doing what they needed to be doing, and the community kind of came together and we came as one and came together and tried to make things happen for a family that really needed help.
Did this feel like a full circle moment, having been someone who was out there searching through the parks for Sade, to being in that courtroom and hearing those 4 counts of guilty?
It's an indescribable feeling. It's something that really needed to happen. It's more of like a bittersweet thing where I'm just like shocked and I'm glad that it happened because I was really worried for a second.
Explain to me, why were you worried for a second there?
Just because, I don't know, I think that it wasn't much like witnesses or something that came from the other side or anything like that. I was just really hoping and praying that it would come together and give us the verdict we needed.
There was a full courtroom today for this verdict. What did that tell you, in your opinion, for people who were here wanting to see what the results were?
I'm proud of our community for coming together. That's what we definitely needed.
Is there anything else, Ilya, you wanted to share about being here, about staying with the family, and just what you experienced today?
I kind of landed there. A little camera shy.
Thank you so much, and I'm thinking of you and the family.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Ilya is just one of the dozens of supporters that were here. Like I mentioned, it was standing room only in the courtroom today. Everyone was kind of holding their breath as the jury came in, as those verdicts were read. There was this sort of electricity in the air from Sade's friends and family as count 1 was read guilty, count 2 was read guilty, count 3 was read guilty, and count 4 was read guilty. So this is certainly something that these friends and family are still processing at this moment. We're still waiting for Sheena Scarborough, which is Sade's mother. She's inside that witness room. I saw her walk by and enter that room. She had tears streaming down her face. I can only imagine how she's been feeling throughout all of this. So we'll be staying live waiting for those comments from Sade's immediate family. They did indicate they will be speaking to us outside the public safety building on those front steps. So we'll be here to get their reaction as well as hopefully the reaction from the prosecution team later in the afternoon, Tom.
All right, Miriam McCarr inside the hallway there of the Milwaukee County Courthouse. We'll be getting back to Miriam soon. Joining me on set here, Steve Shamrez, Patrick Hafferty joining us to talk about this case. And you guys have been speaking about this on the news at 6. We've been talking about it in the morning. What does it tell you that it took them a very short period of time to come up with this verdict?
It's easy to say this now, but the reality is this was a result that was identified as likely early on. The police, law enforcement did a massive investigation. They invested massive resources into collecting evidence and attempting to identify all the relevant information. And the prosecution did a really good job of laying it out for the jury, and the jury was convinced. The defense did what they could in terms of trying to poke holes in the state's case. But the reality is the jury very quickly decided the state had proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt.
There were a lot of moments in the course of the trial. We sat there and spoke about this on the news at 6, where we were wondering where the state was going because we saw so many pieces of evidence that did not seem conclusive in any way. And then yesterday afternoon, Ian Vance Curzan took to that podium and sewed it all together in about a 30-minute speech with visual aids and maps, and he showed clips of video, and it really did wind up telling the story of how Maxwell Anderson did what he's been convicted of doing.
That's right. As you say, if you sort of get down in the weeds, sometimes you look at what a prosecutor or defense lawyer is doing and you think, why are they presenting that? Why are they saying that? Why do they have this witness up there? But at the end of this, the prosecutor really did a nice job in bringing it all together. And as you say, about a half hour, he really condensed this and told a story. And the jury obviously has believed the story.
A lot of people asked at the time when we saw yesterday, the defense not really presenting any witnesses, but it's not super unusual for that to happen. What is the thought process behind that? You just don't think that they've reached the standard of burden of proof of beyond a reasonable doubt?
So really there are two approaches that lawyers will take, defense lawyers will take during the jury trials. One is sort of the hole poking approach, which is what Tony Cotton did here. The other is offering an alternative theory. The defense here chose not to offer an alternative theory. I don't have the inside track on what information they had available or what strategies they considered. But the reality is, if you don't present an alternative theory, it's generally because you don't have one. And here there's still lots of information that the defense would be in possession of, the defendant in particular, about the location of some of the dismembered body parts, how this happened, why this happened, and he chose not to testify. So this may be information that the public just never learns about.
Are you surprised? You knew this was going to happen quickly. I mean, you told us yesterday as we were all preparing our plan for today, maybe 10:30, we have a verdict. The jury had this about 20, 25 minutes in the afternoon, and all of
1 minute this morning.
1 minute this morning. 9 o'clock, we had a verdict this morning. Are you surprised it was that fast?
I'm surprised it was that fast, and I don't know why the judge didn't allow them to deliberate at least for a little while last night, but had she done that, this very well could have happened at 6:30 or 7 o'clock last night if they had been given a little bit of time. With that said, the jurors were there for 2 weeks listening to this evidence, and they clearly paid close attention. You could see lots of them were taking notes, and they were confident in their decision.
What do you know about what happens in the jury room that they decided, you know what, let's not take a vote tonight? Was it, let's all sleep on this, make sure we're good with God and, you know, and our decisions here, and come back in the morning and get it over with?
That may have been, there's no public information about the conversation that the judge had with the jurors, but they may have told her, hey, we're tired, we want to sleep on this and come back tomorrow morning. She may have just said, look, we're not going to keep the courthouse open late for this. She may have expected that they were going to take longer than they did. They probably picked a 4-person last night, and then were told, hey, you're going to head home and come back tomorrow. And they came back, they were well rested, they had digested the information, and they rendered a verdict.
What happens next? So this is a first-degree intentional homicide, carries with it a sentence automatically, right?
It's a life sentence. Theoretically, the judge could set eligibility for extended supervision, which is like parole, after 20 years. But keep in mind, he's got life plus all of the exposure on those other 3 counts. I think 2 of them carry up to 12.5 years, 1 carries up to 3.5 years. So the likely result is life plus 25 is what he's going to end up with. I'd be shocked if this judge were to make him eligible for extended supervision, given the gruesome nature of all of this.
And they did have the option for lesser included, right? Which meant they could have found him guilty of a lesser charge.
That's correct. The first-degree intentional carries a lesser included first-degree reckless homicide. With that said, that's still a 60-year exposure. So it's sort of a Pyrrhic victory to end up with the reckless homicide. It's going to result in a life sentence regardless.
We continue to watch the hallway inside the safety building where everybody has gathered this morning. It's still just a gaggle of people. It's cameras, it's bystanders, people who were in the courtroom this morning. What we're waiting for is the family of Sade Robinson to come out into the hallway. We're told they will address the media now that a verdict has been rendered, and then I believe the clock we're on is about 90 minutes after a verdict. We're going to hear from the prosecution. The Assistant District Attorney Ian Vance Curzan will come to a microphone as well and talk about his reaction to the last couple of weeks and the verdict that was rendered this morning. But right now we are all in a big stand by and wait moment. Tom, I'm struck as we're at the finish line of this case where justice has been rendered, of how this all started for us in the newsroom. 3 stories that unfolded over a couple of days that at first we didn't see connected.
Were they connected or not?
You know, it started with the burned out car on the north side. It was, you know, we get the email that this happened and we picked up some video of that. And then the really alarming story of a body part was found at the beach of Warnemont Park. And again, we didn't have connection on that. And then a little bit later in that week, it was, hey, there's a massive Milwaukee County Sheriff's presence outside this house on the south side. And then it was all put together, oh, the sheriffs are there because Warnemont Park is a county property. This is their case, and this house is connected to the body part that was found in Warnemont Park. It was a little bit later that we stitched it together with the car being burned out on the north side. So it was 3 things that were all kind of put together in reverse order over the course of that week, and then prosecutors put their case together and charged Maxwell Anderson.
And then when just in a couple weeks of that, I believe it was the body parts found in Illinois, not too far down the lakeshore, also believed to be connected to this case and then later connected to this case. I believe we do have the moment that the verdict was read in court this morning. That was about 9:23. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
I will now read them into the record. As to count 1, the verdict reads, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 1 of the information."
Let's ask Pat that question on air. I mean, there are things that are pro forma. His motion to dismiss immediately after the state wrapped its case. You said that was going to happen and likely just be dismissed out of hand. And then the motion made to dismiss the jury's verdict this morning. Again, just a standard procedure in criminal defense?
Yes. We asked the judge to dismiss, we asked for JNOV, judgment notwithstanding the verdict. So he was asking for a judgment of acquittal that the court theoretically has the right to give the defense. There would have to be extraordinary reasons for the judge to do it. Basically, the judge would have to make a finding that no reasonable jury could have come to the conclusion that they did. And given the evidence that was presented here over the last couple of weeks, most certainly this judge believed that a reasonable jury could come to this conclusion.
At what point as a defense attorney do you come up with the strategy to not call witnesses? Is that beginning of this case, or as you start to see the state lay out the case? I mean, you obviously have a witness list, so you know who they're going to call.
Sure. Yeah, generally speaking, the strategy decisions are made before the trial starts. But as a defense lawyer, you're reevaluating your case after each and every witness that the government calls. Through cross-examination, you're attempting to get certain facts into evidence. And if you haven't gotten all of the facts in that you need or you want to ultimately make your closing argument, that's when you may decide that you need to call a witness. But in a lot of these cases, the strategy of the defense is to call as few witnesses as possible, because once you're the proponent of the evidence, you're the proponent of the witness, there's risk involved in that. If the witness goes south for some reason, or the evidence doesn't come in the way that you think it's going to, the burden starts to shift from the state proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt to did they believe the defense witnesses? And you don't want that as a defense lawyer. You want to keep the burden of proof squarely on the state and make it clear to the jury that you don't have to call witnesses. The defendant doesn't have to testify. You have no obligation to present any testimony or evidence at all. And the minute that you do that, you undertake risk.
Yeah, do you think the decision was made early on then for him not to testify?
I think it's likely it was. With that said, the judge did a colloquy in this case with the defendant to ensure that that was his decision. It wasn't his lawyer's decision. And sometimes defendants will surprise their lawyers, and as they listen to the evidence, they believe that they can tell their story in a persuasive way, and they will tell the lawyer, I'm going to testify regardless of what advice you've given me. And that's why the judge conducts that colloquy, because the defendant alone has the constitutional right to make that decision, regardless of what the advice is from the defense lawyer.
But then, yeah, putting him on the stand obviously opens him up as well. Just like any other witness, it opens him up to cross, and you never know what could happen then.
Exactly correct. In this case, if he had testified, he would have had a lot of explaining to do, and it would have been really, really difficult. The defense here had focused on the homicide end of it, because there really was the least amount of evidence as to that count. The other three counts, I wouldn't say overwhelming evidence, but there was significant evidence for the jury to find Maxwell Anderson guilty on those other three counts. So really the defense strategy here was, don't think about those other three counts. Let's focus on whether they have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed the first-degree intentional homicide. I think that Tony Cotton, during his closing argument, did a really good job of using the jury instruction where the court tells the jurors you have to consider each individual count. You don't take it as a package and decide, is he guilty or not guilty of all four. You have to go through each count. Tony did a really nice job of that during his closing argument, but at the end of the day, there was significant overlap between the evidence on each of the counts, including the gruesome dismemberment of this body. And if you listen to the state's closing argument, basically they were saying if this was an accidental death, if this was something other than an intentional homicide, you go and you get help from the law enforcement. You don't dismember the body and burn the car and do all of these other things. It was consciousness of guilt is the way that we phrase it.
There were a number of moments that were surprises to us in the media at first, even as closely as we followed the case. There are things we get to see through return search warrants and the criminal complaints and other filings in court, but things that stand out to me. The moment where we learned that Maxwell Anderson's sweatshirt that he was seen, the hoodie he had on the bus, was in a trash can a couple houses down in the alley. The photos on his phone, again, another moment that was a surprise to us. Were those surprises to the defense team as well, or did they know those things were coming?
They most certainly knew those things were coming. They would have been provided all of that information in discovery. The only thing the defense wouldn't have known is exactly how the state intended to introduce the evidence and use the evidence and what kind of a spin they were going to place on the evidence. But certainly those were damning portions of the government's case, and the defense didn't have much of a response to what they were claiming. You know, if you think about the sweatshirt, it was found in the neighbor's garbage, which would suggest that he had attempted to conceal it. He didn't put it in his own garbage, didn't leave it at his home. And within the sweatshirt were the lighter and matches and other such things that would have been used to start the fire. So that was damning evidence. And then I think the way the state used these photographs that were on Maxwell's phone of Sade Robinson, the state never really said, hey, she's completely incapacitated because of drugs or death or choking. The state didn't go into that, but they made it clear she had to have been incapacitated in those photographs to be tolerating the behavior that Maxwell Anderson was engaged in. So it helped the state explain why there wouldn't be significant DNA evidence within the home, that the DNA evidence would have been taken elsewhere into the park, and the rain washed most of that away.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that because, you know, as we were going through this case, I think, as Steve mentioned, we a lot of times learn things from the charging documents and court documents that are filed before, but there was really no connection to any type of DNA evidence in those charging documents. And when we got into the testimony of what happened inside the house or what evidence they found, I expected at some point to hear some sort of DNA evidence was found in the house. Now, there was DNA evidence that she was there, which we already knew. Nobody was disputing that. But there was never any DNA evidence of any type of crime being committed. Is that surprising to you?
It's not surprising. I mean, the evidence was what it was, but you know, the defense clearly tried to take advantage of that fact. You heard Tony Cotton repeatedly questioning law enforcement about the lack of DNA on any of the knives that they took, the axe that they took or hatchet that they took, no blood splattering evidence within the house. The assumption, I think, early on was that the dismemberment must have occurred in the home, and Tony was attempting to point out that there was just no evidence of that, no evidence of cleanup or anything else. But again, in the state's closing argument, they really made clear that the dismemberment must have occurred in Warnemont Park. And again, toward the end of the case, when they put the former girlfriend on to talk about Maxwell Anderson's affinity for this park, that he spent lots of time there, was very familiar with it, that was damning as well for the defense, because it made clear that he sort of had a plan, or at the very least at the last minute decided that was a good place to conduct the dismemberment.
Let's get to Attorney Tony Cotton. He's now speaking outside the Milwaukee County Courthouse complex.
They thought about it overnight. They probably took a vote this morning and decided there wasn't any reason prolonging things.
Were you surprised how quickly they came back with the verdict?
It's quick and it's not quick. I mean, everybody had the night to think about things. They've been sitting through a 2-week trial. It's quick in the sense that they deliberated for a short period of time, but the trial has lasted 2 weeks. It shouldn't take people days and days and days to sort of know where they stand once they've been presented with this kind of evidence.
Is there any evidence or testimony that surprised you during this?
There really wasn't. I mean, most of the testimony we heard was aligned with what we had read and expected to see coming in. I mean, there's always some twists that happen in trial, but nothing totally unexpected.
You brought up some things that were found in the safe in Sade Robinson's apartment, maybe making the suggestion that she had been communicating with unsavory characters, with drug dealers, because she had drugs in her safe.
I think it's important that the jury be given all the evidence. The judge had talked about that early on. Part of their job is to determine the truth, and so they should be presented with all relevant evidence and do what they will with it. Obviously, they didn't find that to be a particularly meaningful point, and we respect that.
Why did Maxwell Anderson take the stand?
That's a personal decision for him. I think there's a lot of reasons why somebody wouldn't take the stand. I still think, even I know it's a guilty verdict, but I still think there would have been a lot of problems potentially with taking the stand. You get cross-examined, so I respect that.
We saw Maxwell tearing up during closings. How is he feeling right now? How's his family feeling?
The family wasn't here because obviously there's a lot of attention surrounding things. The family is, I haven't talked to them yet, but I've texted with his father. They're sad. Max is holding up okay. They keep a close eye on him in here. I just saw him, and he'll be there for sentencing.
What do you think is going to come from sentencing?
I don't know. The judge ordered a pre-sentence report, and minimum would be 20 years, and it goes up from there.
What do you have to say to Sade Robinson's family?
My heart goes out to Sade's family, and I can't imagine what they're going through. Same thing I said in opening statement to them. It's unbelievable what happened to their daughter. My heart goes out to them. Can't imagine what they're going through.
Your own family, you had some threats on your life during this trial. Are you relieved it's over?
Yeah, I mean, there's a sense of relief whenever you're done with any trial, and certainly the threats didn't make things weren't a good thing. It's something you have to deal with.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Attorney Tony Cotton, he did mention briefly there were death threats made against him and members of his family because he had the job of defending Maxwell Anderson, and some people did not like that he took on that job. We talked about this the other day. This is an inherent part of our criminal justice system. Everybody is entitled to a vigorous defense.
Yes, and Tony gave Maxwell Anderson a vigorous defense and did it in a respectful way. I mean, if you listen to Tony, he is someone who respects the process, and he talks about being sympathetic toward the family, respectful toward the jury's verdict. This is the way that the criminal justice system is supposed to work. It's supposed to be players within the system doing their jobs, and then the system produces a result. That's exactly what occurred today. So it's beyond the pale that people would threaten Tony or his family or threaten anyone else who's participated in this. Everyone within this case did their jobs the way that they were supposed to.
If you're the defense attorney, so what happens at this point? Do you file an appeal? Is there even a point in doing that in a case like this?
So the appeal can't be filed until after the sentencing. So right now, Cotton and Anderson will focus on the sentencing aspect of this. As you heard Tony say, the judge ordered a pre-sentence report, which is basically a report that is compiled by a probation agent. The agent gathers information about the defendant's background, family situation, things of that nature, criminal history or lack of criminal history, and puts that into a report along with a discussion of the facts of the case. The pre-sentence writer will make a recommendation to the judge as to what they think the sentence should be. The judge digests all of that, gives the parties an opportunity to make an argument at the time of sentencing, and then the judge will decide what the sentence will be. As I said, in a case like this, it would be shocking if he doesn't get life plus some significant sentence beyond that. So as far as the appeal goes, that can be filed after the sentencing. In a case like this, it's going to be really difficult for the defense to pull together a cogent argument as to why the conviction should be overturned. In watching the case over the last couple of weeks, there were really no controversial rulings on the part of the judge. This was tried in a very clean fashion. I would be very surprised if there are any significant issues that can be raised on appeal. That doesn't mean that the defendant won't appeal. The reality is he doesn't have a whole lot to lose by appealing. If he's received life plus 25 at the end of this, he may as well take it up with the Court of Appeals. But I don't expect, given what I saw of this case, that there would be any relief that would come from post-conviction work.
Tony Cotton did a really nice job where he could, poking holes in the state's case, because the state's case was so heavily based on circumstantial evidence. And people at home might hear the word circumstantial evidence and think that means flimsy evidence. You told me last week that sometimes circumstantial evidence can be the strongest evidence. Explain to everybody at home what that means, where you can take a couple of facts where A has to equal B based on circumstantial evidence.
I think the prosecutor here during his closing argument did a really good job of explaining the concept of circumstantial evidence in the context of this case. Basically what he was saying is we have really strong evidence that Maxwell Anderson mutilated the corpse, concealed the corpse, committed this arson, and the reality is we don't have direct evidence as to how Sade Robinson died. But think about it this way, you don't commit these other 3 crimes if the death was accidental or you're not the one who committed the homicide. So in the context of circumstantial evidence, that is circumstantial evidence of Maxwell Anderson having committed the homicide. Nobody came in and said, I watched him do this, or the state presenting a video recording of it happening. That would have been direct evidence. But the circumstantial evidence here, the consciousness of guilt that was demonstrated by these actions that he took after her death, most certainly suggested that he committed an intentional homicide, and the state did a really good job of presenting that to the jury.
And in my mind now, in hindsight, it helps me put together some of the DNA that was missing. We know during the investigation they were focused on his basement. They were ripping out pipes, trying to do luminol blood testing and DNA testing. There was a pit in the backyard we were told about that was a focus at some point. Nothing was ever found there, but the prosecution was able to put together a couple of circumstantial facts that, she was intact at 12, whatever it was, on his couch. And then he's at the beach for this extended period of time, and then we see body parts after that. And that then gives them, in their minds, oh, it must have happened here. I didn't see it snow, but there's snow on the ground, so it must have snowed last night, conclusion.
That's right. And you make a good point also about not only the investigation that was conducted, but the presentation that the state did about the investigation, because they anticipated the defense was going to try to poke holes. So if they hadn't done the investigation in the basement where they tear up the pipes and look for DNA and all these other things that they did that turned out to be not fruitful in terms of producing evidence for them, if they hadn't done those things, the defense would have pointed that out. Hey, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this. And the defense would have been critical of the investigation. So as far as the law enforcement investigation is concerned and the manner in which the state presented this, they really did a thorough and excellent job on behalf of the people of Milwaukee County and Sade Robinson's family.
You're watching the family of Sade Robinson exit the courthouse there this morning. We're told that they will speak outside momentarily. They have said that they will speak on behalf of the family. I believe Sade's mom is the person we're going to hear from here. But again, they're making their way outside just as we wait to hear from them. What happens at this case, or right now, and in this case, with the defendant himself? He's obviously been remanded back to custody. He's been in custody the whole time. But where does he wait here in the county jail until we get to the sentencing?
Yes, he will remain in the county jail. He'll work with his lawyers to prepare for sentencing, and then once he is sentenced, he will be moved to the Wisconsin Department of Corrections custody. Everyone who is convicted and goes to prison starts out at Dodge Correctional, which is in Waupun. They spend some time there, and then staff there decide which prison they're going to send them to. So he'll be here for a while, and some of that time he'll spend productively preparing for the sentencing.
Not to delve too deeply into it because it's a separate case, but there's some civil cases going on during this entire thing as well. The family of Sade Robinson going after the bars that served her underage, and they believe that she was under the influence, intoxicated when that happened. So we're going to be hearing about this case for quite some time.
Yes, my guess is those civil cases will settle. I doubt that they will go to trial. Those are separate theories of liability for the businesses that were involved. They're not directly responsible for Sade Robinson's death, On the other hand, the theory has to be that somehow allowing her into the taverns and serving her alcohol may have contributed to her vulnerability, and there may be some civil liability for that.
Just to give everybody at home an idea of what we're waiting on here, we're still waiting to hear from the family of Sade Robinson. That's expected to happen in the hallway outside the courtroom in the public safety building. We're also expecting at 11 o'clock a news conference with the prosecution and with law enforcement, and that's going to be in about 45 minutes. We'll hear from them. There's also this stakeout position right outside the front doors of the Milwaukee County Safety Building where we're waiting to hear from people as well. So it's going to be about another 45 minutes before we hear from all the parties involved here. That's if Sade Robinson's family comes out of that victim witness room.
I believe some members of the family actually walked down the steps when we were chatting there a few minutes ago. So it appears that at least they are planning to have this moment with the press outside of the courthouse there instead of in the hallway, which we all know is a pretty tight building with not a lot of room to move around in. To recap what happened, 15-20 minutes of jury deliberation yesterday after the closing arguments in this case, after both sides rested, the defense without calling any witnesses yesterday. The jury came back at 9 o'clock this morning. We were told in the courtroom there's some sort of buzzer system. If they hear one buzz, the jury has a question. If they hear two, the jury has a verdict. It was 9:01 when that email came into our newsroom that the jury had a verdict, and some 22 minutes later it was read, and the verdict is as follows: guilty on all 4 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse and dismembering a body, and hiding a corpse. All found guilty, Maxwell Anderson, on all 4 of those counts, and then remanded into custody. He was already in custody, but as we just mentioned here, where he will wait until we get to the sentencing, which is scheduled for August 15th at 10 a.m.
And in the courtroom this morning, a lot of friends and family of Sade Robinson were in the room. Notably absent this morning, the family of Maxwell Anderson. They were in court yesterday. The last interaction between Maxwell's parents and him. A kiss was blown, a wave through the glass. They were not there this morning. Again, let's go back in time to that first week in April a year ago. Maxwell Anderson's father at the time, I know this because I believe I'm the first person who spoke with him and told him that police, law enforcement were at that house. Steve Anderson was stunned. He had no idea what was going on. When I reached him in Florida, one of the mornings that we were putting together what was going on at that property that changed hands from Steve Anderson to Maxwell Anderson. It was a transfer within the family. And we spoke a couple times that week, and he just did not know what was going on in his world. What people come to you in their worst moments. What's that like, dealing with a family in this situation that's just trying to get some answers and get their heads on straight as the world is spinning around them?
Many people are shocked when they hear that their family members have significant allegations against them, like homicide or sexual assault or whatever it may be, and you watch families struggle because they want to be supportive of the family member, and many of them don't want to believe that their family member is capable of doing what they're accused of. On the other hand, they want to be realistic, and they want to understand what happened. So at the beginning of these things, people are very often hoping for the best. They have very little information that they're operating off of, and as time goes on, when more information becomes available to them, some family members begin to adjust their assumptions about what did or didn't happen, and some don't. I mean, you see some people who they will stand by their family member regardless of whatever the facts may be. You see others start to peel away and I wouldn't say abandon their family members, but they start to really question whether their family member is guilty of what they're accused of, and that may be what's happening here.
Yeah, and not suggesting that's why they weren't in court this morning. I think what we heard was they weren't in court today just because they knew that there were going to be so many members of Robinson's family and her supporters there. They just wanted to give a little bit of deference to them on this morning.
Yeah, and that would be a very polite and civil thing to do. You want to avoid confrontation in these situations. What I always think of is they use the word civil when they talk about the court system. And that's the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a place where people can come and resolve disputes in a civil way. People don't have to get into fistfights and shoot at each other to resolve a dispute. They can come to the court system and it can be handled politely, if you will.
So are our politics, but we've seen how that goes in recent years.
That's another conversation.
Miriam McCarr is at the courthouse this morning. She was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. And Miriam, can you tell us a little bit more about the reaction when the verdict was read this morning?
Tom, it was an audible sigh of relief. As you mentioned, the courtroom was packed with Sade Robinson's friends and family members. Maxwell Anderson's family was not in attendance, so everyone was really just holding their breath as those verdicts were being read. As each guilty count came through, you could just kind of feel shoulders loosen and this big sigh of relief. We're standing outside waiting to hear from Sade Robinson's family. They said that they were going to be finishing up upstairs in the witness room and speak to reporters coming out. So you can see the setup behind me. We have friends, family members that are standing here also waiting to hear from Sade's mother specifically, who has been here throughout the majority of the trial. We're seeing people here already crying on the grass with relief and just overwhelming emotion after everything that has happened over the past 2 weeks in court. Even as we've just been standing here, we've had cars drive by honking their horns, people yelling out the windows, justice for Sade. So this case has certainly been one that has gripped not only the family, but also the community and Milwaukee County as a whole. To see it sort of concluded in this way has been a very full circle moment for many of the people who live here and who have been watching this trial unfold, much like us in the newsroom and everyone who has been here since the beginning of this case and this trial really beginning. So we're still waiting outside, and hopefully Sade's family will be coming out shortly. Of course, we'll be streaming that and hearing from the district attorney's office as well within the next few hours. So we'll be hearing that reaction as, of course, this case has finally come to some sort of conclusion. But we'll be here till the end of this. So, Tom, back to you.
All right, Miriam McCarr at the courthouse this morning outside, where we expect to hear from the family of Sade Robinson momentarily, followed then by the prosecutors in this case.
This has been 2 weeks, a lot of long days of testimony. How does a jury soak all of this up? I mean, you're asking a lot of 12 people to sit there and absorb all of this and come to a conclusion.
You really are. If you think about the disruption in their lives, this is significant service to their community. I always tell people that other than military service, jury service is probably the most significant way that citizens can serve their community. And I mean that. The reality is that people joke. They say, oh, I got my jury summons. How am I going to find my way to get out of it, or whatever it may be. But the system doesn't work unless these people show up and they do their jobs. And for these people to not be with their families, not be at their jobs, neglecting all other aspects of their lives, to sit and listen to what was at sometimes brutal testimony, their service to the community can't be understated. They really are entitled to praise for their involvement and the attention that they paid to this.
Let's go back to the steps of the public safety building. This is the family of Sade Robinson coming out. Let's just listen in for a bit.
Sade Robinson.
Tell them don't ever play with you, okay?
First and foremost, we'd like to thank the jury. We'd like to thank the judge. We'd like to thank the community for stepping forward and helping us locate her remains. We'd like to thank them for having patience with the family and for their support. It has been a long year. It has been a moment of grief that no parent should have to bear, and that this family has endured. They've held their heads up high, as they've sat through this trial. There were moments of weakness, there were moments of anger, there were moments of frustration, and throughout all of that, they were victorious in seeking justice. That was the most important thing to them, and we are appreciative to this community for supporting them in that. And as we move forward, we will be seeking legislation to help prevent this type from happening in the future, to support women who are sex trafficked, who are kidnapped, who are put in positions where they are vulnerable, and where the system right now does not put forth enough effort to seek and find them before it gets to the point that they are missing. We want a situation where when someone steps forward and says that someone is missing, immediate actions are able to be taken. We want a better system for communicating and for women knowing how to communicate when they feel like someone's missing and what the next step is for someone to do. That's something that should be taught to students for them to be aware of how to react when they see a friend in trouble. I know that we would not have gotten to this point if it wasn't for the young women who saw the car on fire, stepping forward and saying something and calling attention to what they saw. It took a village for this to happen, and for this person to be caught for this crime, and for Maxwell Anderson to be convicted. It was many people who came forward and took those steps, but we also need to know how to take those steps. What actions should be taken when you see evidence? How do you collect evidence? What evidence should be collected and how to preserve it? Those are things that we are not taught that are necessary for our judicial system to function properly. And I believe we have Representative Stubbs here. Yeah, she's somewhere over here. Here she is. Yes. She is helping to support this family and bringing forth that type of legislation and drafting those types of bills. She's been being instrumental in this community for seeking information from victims, from witnesses on how she can support what that bill should say. So if you have that type of information, if you have anything that you want to provide to her office, please do so. To me, the more voices that are heard, the more experts that can provide information, including psychologists, therapists, victim witness representatives, politicians, as well as litigators on both sides, defense attorneys and prosecutors alike. That information being brought forward to be put into a bill that can be concise, that can be proactive, that's important to this family at this point. We are going to be moving forward with our civil litigation case now that this has been resolved, and it will move forward quite rapidly once the sentencing has occurred. I am to some degree grateful about the fact that it was put on pause, because now I'm hoping I can get a ruling that he cannot use the Fifth Amendment to prevent such things as depositions and such forth moving forward. And we greatly did have the intent to hold a deposition where we will ask pertinent questions and where we can hopefully finally get to some other truths that the family would like answers to. And I thank you all for being here. I know from a health standpoint that my client has endured multiple issues health-wise that we are now going to be able to address and move forward on. She was pausing on some of her health needs just until this was over. But now we'll be able to pay focus on those things as well. I know people have asked that question about how she was feeling and her mood throughout the trial, and there was one day that she couldn't attend, but that was the reason. There's been some things that, I don't know if anyone has had moments of lack of sleep. But when you cannot sleep for a year, when you have to deal with the torture of what happened to your child, when you have to sit through multiple times being shown those photos by the prosecution to prepare her for sitting through the trial, then to have to actually sit through that and have community members and politicians in Waukegan put those things out in the public in an indecent manner. And I've been told, which I'm quite upset about, that someone in this media team, and I'm not sure where they are specifically as I'm standing here, but someone did a very disrespectful thing and put this out in the media and actually exposed photographs of her child. I am just begging you to remove them before we have to seek legal action against you as well. That was disturbing. That was disrespectful. That should never have been done. So whoever that was, please take that down. It is my understanding that that information is now sweeping through underground media. And if you don't know what I mean by that, there is a such thing as the dark web. The dark web loves to expose those type of photographs, and they make money off of them. This did not happen in the city of Milwaukee. This should not happen to any victim. It should specifically not happen in this case. I am extremely upset by that. Yes. That type of information should have even never been leaked to the media. If it was, you should have destroyed it. You should have had enough decency to destroy it. This case has been riddled with people who are inappropriate. This case has been riddled with people who are indecent, inhumane. That's why we are here. So for you to continue that type of behavior is appalling. It should cease. We are demanding that it ceases. The family is demanding that it ceases.
Yeah.
The community demands that it ceases. We should not feed into the dark web. We should not feed into dark behaviors. Yes. Take action. Respect yourselves. Respect this community. Yes. If you're going to be the people who report the news, report it in a proper manner. Yes. Yes. We have nothing else to say.
How do you feel the state prosecuted this case?
I believe they did the best job that they could with the information that they had at hand. This was a circumstantial case. There were no eyewitnesses, and he did his job to try to do this case in as best as he could, dealing with a person who did everything that he could potentially do to try to conceal evidence and hide. So when you have that type of person at hand, which is one of the most vile type of criminals that you could be, because your whole goal is to continue to commit crimes and get away with it, which is why most of us believe that this is not his first time. Most people aren't that good at hiding their activity when it's their first time. So we are happy that he is behind bars, that he will not be able to do this to anyone else.
How frustrating is it to still not have answers about where her remains are and how she died?
Well, we believe we know how she died. Based on the circumstantial evidence, the reports from the autopsy reports, we believe we know how she died. As far as the rest of the remains, I am hoping that throughout the process of the civil litigation, I'm able to give some more answers. I wish we could have gotten them now. I wish his family as well as him would have been more upfront and honest about what was happening. But someone that went to that extent to hide and conceal, how much more could we expect of that type of a person?
Do you feel justice has been served?
I believe justice has been served from the standpoint of a criminal situation. Justice is a strong word, and it requires more than just the judicial system from a criminal standpoint. It also requires litigation. It requires legislation to happen to prevent these things in the future. So those are things that a community has to do to support justice. Justice is not just one day in court. It has to be a continued effort by media, by the everyday individual when they decide to go vote. Justice is an ongoing process.
Just want to get to Sheila.
She is honestly exasperated and exhausted. Both parents have been exhausted. I mean, this is a type of case where you saw a father get so angry and frustrated that he destroyed a ball that should be indestructible. And a mother who has sat through this this is grueling 2 weeks of testimony where you saw people getting exhausted to the point where they were falling asleep. You saw a mother get so filled with anxiety and frustration and overwhelming sentiment that has now harmed her physically, health-wise, emotionally, mentally, and everything else. This type of a case takes every cell in your body to get through. It's not something that you just can, let me go get through my day like you get through to a regular day at work. It's just not that. And so I understand her not speaking to you today. I understand her and respect her, and I hope that you do as well. Her taking the position that she's just tired.
Ms. Wanigan, everybody here has been in the courtroom every single day. Is there someone who could come forward to just talk about what it finally feels to hear that verdict that you all have been waiting for? Step forward, please. You got this, Sheila.
Thank you.
You got this.
I remember Sade is forever, she will be forever remembered as an angel, a light worker who's touched so many souls, so many lives in the Milwaukee community. She is our hero. She is forever leaving an imprint. She walks in her own path, her own light. She solved her own case. My baby solved her own case. That's how I raised my kids. We don't give up. We are fighters. I demanded justice. I stand tall. I stand affirmative. Sade will continue to walk with me daily and right beside me. Please continue to support us by walking in how you move every day. Like, live by your principles. Live in your true spirit. That's how Sade is remembered, from every job, from every stranger, from every person she touched. Her energy is just, it will be forever with us. Please continue to support the foundation, SadesVoiceFoundation.com. Myself and Adriana and all of the Sade's Voice angels and light workers that have been standing beside me, the whole team. We will definitely be advocating for all of the other missing, murdered, all of the other individuals in the community. I appreciate everybody in the community that's been standing beside us and by us. I know that there's a lot of other crime victim families in the community that have been outreaching me, and I had to, I have to take it one step at a time. I had to get my baby's justice first before I can be able to help maneuver and support any other crime victim families. But that's definitely going to be our mission. That's how I'm going to carry on Sade's, her voice. Definitely. I'll be working with Representative Sheila Stubbs. Thank you so much for being here. We're pushing for the Missing and Murder Task Force. It's mandatory. The state definitely needs it for our BIPOC women, for all women. And just allow us time to just kind of grieve. I haven't really had a day to grieve since April of last year. Me and Adriana have been nonstop all day, every day. We my mom, my family, all of us, we don't give up. So that's what I can say about Sade. Go hard for your kids. If anybody has learned anything from this situation, please talk to your kids. Please communicate. It takes a village. See something, say something. And we'll be working to do many things. Just continue to follow us and support us. And my mission is for crime victim families.
Ms. Sheena, are you able to finally have some relief tonight after fighting so hard for justice, knowing that this man who murdered your baby is going to be spending decades in jail?
It's definitely, it's a weight. It's such a heavy weight. It's never going to be the same. Even for Adriana, like my mom, that's our best friend. That's my baby. That's my angel. And there's no such thing as justice. Like, we don't have her, but we all, please understand how you treat people and how you put out energy and how you recycle it into the community, because I guess that's what keeps me knowing that it was the relationship that I had with my daughter, and it's nothing but positive energy, and the goals and the things that she was able to accomplish in her 19 years is just so phenomenal. And I have that peace in my heart knowing that I did the best possible job as a mother, and I will forever have her close in my heart to spirit.
Sheena, do you have any words for Maxwell Anderson?
No.
What's your favorite memory, childhood memory of Sade?
Everything. Her smile. just her light. She carried an aura, like the glow, the same aura that she FaceTimed me the Monday before she was taken. That same aura, angelic aura, that is literally a glow. Like Sade carried that glow from birth, and it's just her energy. Her energy. That's my. There's so many memories. There's so many memories, and throughout all of this, like throughout the grief and everything, Sade continues to talk to me, to guide me, and her mission is still wanting to help others.
How does it feel to have the verdict but still not to have her crown? I know that's something we've talked about over and over again.
It's the most agonizing, painful thing, Bria. Like this, me and her dad, I just don't see how a demonic type energy can have no remorse and sit there, and you know how their family can support them and literally sit there and cover up and support the things that they were aware of that their son did. So karma's a bitch, and I will continue to fight to get her continued justice and for all of the other missing and murdered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you.
Sade Robinson's mother, Sheena Scarborough, speaking after Verona Swanigan. The family is attorney there on the steps of the public safety building. Sheena clearly feeling a lot of emotions. Today, as she's been very open with us over the past year, but to see her this morning, now seeing justice for her daughter.
Struck by her restraint when asked what she would say to Maxwell Anderson. You know, this family has a lot to say, as we've sort of heard here this morning, but she chose not to say anything in that moment. She did talk about Sade being forever remembered as an angel and leaving her imprint, and it struck me when she was saying that. Part of the route I walk through the city here goes by the pizza shuttle, which is where Sade worked, and there is a mural underneath the pizza shuttle with her picture on it. And in the days beginning of this trial, candles and flowers and more mementos were left there at that site because she did leave such an imprint on the people she worked with, her friends, and of course, her family.
Again, a jury this morning finding Maxwell Anderson guilty on all charges against him, including first-degree homicide, the murder of Sade Robinson. That happening the 2nd of April of last year, and today on the 6th of June 2025 he has been found guilty. Sentencing is going to happen the middle of August. There's a mandatory life sentence that comes along with first-degree intentional homicide. Is some possibility that Judge Crivello in this case could give him some type of supervised release at some point in the future. Not likely, based on the other charges that are stacked up against him as well.
We're waiting for the prosecutors in this case. We've heard from defense attorneys, Tony Cotton, we've heard from the family, as you just saw there, and prosecutors in this case expected to speak about 15 minutes from now. Our Ben Jordan is in the courthouse where he is waiting for them to come down, and Ben, they're expected to address the case.
That's right, Tom. We're about 15 minutes away from this news conference. We can already see Sheriff Danita Ball right behind me. We're also expecting to hear from the lead prosecutor on this case, along with the district attorney. District Attorney Kent Lovern just walked in, as well as the collaboration with Milwaukee police. We know hundreds, if not thousands of hours went into investigating this case and being able to prove Maxwell Anderson guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I go through search warrants all the time. I can tell you I found about a dozen over the past several months, hundreds of pages long, gathering evidence and being able to search his phone, being able to go inside his home and showing pictures of what they found. So we're expecting to hear the reaction from this case, from the outcome. I can tell you I've been walking through the courthouse this morning, people unaffiliated with this case talking about this verdict, guilty on all 4 counts. We'll be here live once this news conference starts. Back to you, Tom.
All right, Ben Jordan live inside the county courthouse. We're expected to hear from the prosecutors in this case. As he said, there are several different law enforcement agencies coming together there to talk after the guilty verdict of Maxwell Anderson.
I'm Steve Chamras. This is Tom Durian. This is defense attorney Pat Cafferty. For those of you just tuning in, we have been here for a couple hours now, and we will be here through this news conference at 11 a.m. as we're discussing the events in court this morning and the last couple of weeks. Jenna Ray has been our reporter in the courtroom, Pat, the past couple of weeks, and she wanted me to pass along a question about evidence that was presented. Everybody thought that the body parts evidence was going to be some of the toughest evidence for the room to handle. Jenna tells me that she was really struck yesterday by the photos of the incapacitated Sade Robinson that were, again, a surprise to us. We did not know this was coming. We knew that we were going to see pictures of dismembered body parts. That everybody knew that. But seeing the photos from Maxwell Anderson's phone of an incapacitated Sade Robinson face down on his couch, Jenna makes it sound like it really took the wind out of the room. Would you agree that that was the coup de grace by the prosecution in this case?
I do, and it came toward the end of the case, and as we had discussed all along, there was a lot of scientific evidence and evidence that frankly wasn't super interesting, and it wasn't very human. When they put in those photographs of her that were from Maxwell Anderson's phones, it really humanized Sade Robinson. It was no longer talking about some abstract homicide. It was talking about an actual human being. They saw the photograph of her. They saw her in this incapacitated state. And it also put a twist on what must have been going through Maxwell Anderson's mind, that he would be taking photographs during this event. It certainly put him in a negative light with the jury.
Yeah, we talk about it affecting the courtroom, the jury possibly, and maybe the outcome of the case, but even today, the family just speaking about it right there on the steps, about photos that had made their way out of the courtroom, not from any of the network affiliate news operations here in the city, but from others that have made their way online, and they called for those to be removed and are looking at taking legal action for that. Those pictures certainly having an effect on everybody watching this case. We did talk a little bit off camera here about the phone. And before this case went to trial, one of the reasons it was delayed as long as it was because the defense filed a motion saying we want to take a look at the phone, or there may be evidence of an alibi on this phone. Now, that never came up because they didn't call any witnesses in this case. But is that, as you were saying, due diligence? They want to make sure they look at every single piece of evidence?
That's correct. Tony Cotton had an obligation. Every defense lawyer has an obligation to run out the ground balls, if you will. To investigate things that may not end up going anywhere, but if a person is convicted and they appeal and they claim ineffective assistance of counsel, if Maxwell Anderson had come back and said, hey, I had asked my lawyer to look into this issue with the phone that may have created an alibi for me, and Tony hadn't done that, that may have created a reason for the case to be overturned. And from the perspective of Sade Robinson's family, that's the last thing they want. They want closure on this. They now have the beginning of closure with the verdict, but if the case were to go to the Court of Appeals and be overturned because Tony Cotton hadn't done his job, that doesn't serve anyone well, certainly doesn't serve the system well. So he did the right thing by asking for that, and that leads to something else we were talking about, which is how the system is currently functioning. The fact that this would go to trial within 14 months of the crime for a case this significant is a sign that the system is functioning at a high level again. If you think about what was going on during COVID, cases were being delayed and delayed and delayed, and as they say, justice delayed is justice denied. This is a reasonable time frame for this trial to have occurred and for the Robinson family to have gotten their justice.
There's a meme out there in the world, and you follow me and you'll see where we're going. How many movies could you disrupt the entire plot of by inserting a cell phone into the movie? Conversely, this case would not have been the same case a couple of decades ago. Maxwell Anderson, you said, he could have gotten away with this if not for these devices right here and all those cameras that now everybody can buy for, you know, $60 online and put on their house or their business. That technology really changed the game for law enforcement.
Absolutely, and law enforcement has done an excellent job of investing resources into being able to harvest the evidence and information from electronic evidence, whether it be private security cameras that we saw from businesses and homes in this case, or the extraction of evidence from cell phones, the ability to link up with experts to explain how some of the electronic evidence from the phones can be used in various cases. If you watch old TV shows about detectives, they're sort of the gumshoe with the little notes and asking questions. The nature of law enforcement has changed dramatically. The nature of a detective has changed dramatically.
Do juries then expect more?
They do, and I think prosecutors have become very sensitive to that. So oftentimes during voir dire, you'll see prosecutors ask the potential jurors, hey, who watches CSI at home, and do you expect this to be like a CSI episode where we present some DNA evidence and boom, the case is solved in a half hour? And they're trying to get ahead of this super high expectation that has been created by movies and television shows about prosecutors and law enforcement. So they too have done a good job of adjusting to the modern era and being able to satisfy jurors and prevent defense lawyers from alleging that the investigation has been derelict because the investigators have failed to collect electronic evidence or video or whatever it may be. It's sort of a cat and mouse game that has happened over the last couple of decades and will continue as the technology continues to develop.
Yeah, they can look back at those phones, they can look at waypoints, GPS waypoints, figure out exactly where the phone was, where it stopped. Could have been his phone, could have been her phone in this case. And then in this case, you end up finding out that there, as we just mentioned in the last day, there's actual photographic evidence on that phone that they introduced in front of the jury, which of course showed Sade seemingly incapacitated at the home of Maxwell Anderson.
About 5 minutes now to the top of the hour. We are awaiting a news conference with the state and everybody that makes up the state in a case like this. We have law enforcement, we have the Milwaukee County Sheriff, we have, I'm told, District Attorney Kent Lovern and members of his team are in the room, including Ian Vance Curzan, the lead prosecutor in the courtroom. We're going to get to that in just a couple of minutes, as we're told that's set for 11 o'clock. We're going to bring that to you live as well. We've also already heard this morning from the family of Sade Robinson and the family's attorney, and a lot of people who just needed to be there in the courtroom this morning. They followed this and supported the family. People who helped the search. I mean, you'll think back to those first weeks of April where there were people just taking up the search on their own because we'd had a limb found at Warnemont Park. We had another small piece of her body found on the north side of the city, and people just decided to take it upon themselves to go out and find evidence. And that ultimately is that pink blanket that was brought up as evidence in the case. That was found by civilians who were just out searching the north side of the city.
And there was some question at the time about how that was missed originally, but Sade sort of became the city's daughter in that moment, as a lot of people went and looked for her, any evidence in this case. We talked about people showing up at the courthouse. Our Gideon Verdeen was there outside the courthouse when the guilty verdict was read for Maxwell Anderson. He spoke with Nachelsea, that's a mother who's been following the trial. Take a listen to what she had to say.
That she can rest peacefully. She got her justice, her and her family. I have a daughter, so she's around the same age as her, so it's kind of like been an impact. I've been going to her page, looking at her pictures. It's been sad.
So yeah, we were hearing from folks that were at the courtroom, from our Mary Jo Ola, also speaking with people there, not related to the case directly, not a family or friend of Sade Robinson, but as we mentioned, so many people in the city following this case moment by moment wanted to be down there when the verdict was read, when this case verdict was read into record, and they were there today, and you heard them talking.
Let's talk about what comes next for the legal part of this, the sentencing. That'll be August 15th, first thing in the morning. What happens between now and that day and then is decided on the morning of the 15th?
Part of what's going to happen is the victim witness office from the DA, District Attorney's office, will work with the family to start to put together their presentation, the Robinson family. So they'll line up the people who will speak at the hearing. In a case like this, the sentencing becomes very victim focused and very focused on the family of the victim. So there will be work done to prepare the family to present to the judge at the time of sentencing.
That is correct. Okay.
On the defense side, the presentation may involve witnesses from the defense family who would come in and speak of his character, speak of his clean history prior to this. So the defense will be lining those folks up, and then the defense typically would submit a sentencing memorandum in advance of the hearing. There will be that pre-sentence report that we discussed that's submitted by the Department of Corrections, a probation agent who gets assigned to collect information and provide it to the judge. You know, the reality is the judge wants as much information as she can get in a case like this prior to making the decision. The focus simply isn't on, hey, you were convicted of this type of a charge, therefore it's automatic that you're going to receive this kind of a sentence.
What is she's limited in the decision she can make here, Judge Crivello. I mean, what is the decision she has to make on the big charge?
The limit on the first-degree intentional homicide is when she sets eligibility for extended supervision.
Is it mandatory she does that, or is that optional?
So the first eligibility could be at 20 years if she chooses to do that. She could choose to set eligibility in the year 2150, long after Maxwell Anderson's natural life. So she has the ability to give him a sentence without the possibility of parole, is the way that people think about it.
We're just about a minute away from the prosecution speaking here at the county courthouse. And as we get to that, I wonder just if, when it comes to that sentencing, because of the other charges that are with this, that it's unlikely that he'll get any type of supervised release or anything like that?
I would place it at highly unlikely. I think it's likely to be life plus 25 or as many years as the judge can give him.
All right, let's take our feet now inside the room where the news conference is going to happen with the state. We've heard from the defense. Tony Cotton spoke. We heard from the victim's family. This is, when you hear the state versus Maxwell Anderson, these people right here represented the state in that courtroom. These were the prosecutors, these were the investigators, this was the law enforcement that built this case and put on that case in Judge Crivello's courtroom, which ultimately ended with 4 guilty verdicts against Maxwell Anderson. We see the lead Sheriff's Department investigator there. She was a regular at the state's table, the prosecution table in the courtroom. District Attorney Kent Lovern there in the background, Milwaukee County Sheriff Danita Ball there as well, Ian Vance Curzan, who was the lead prosecutor in the room. They're now taking the podium. Let's switch over to that and listen in.
I'm just kidding.
I know, I was like, you told me where I need to be.
I don't know where to go.
Hi, how are you?
You know, right there.
No, you're all right. Thank you very much. You're not going in the back. Oh, no, you're not. Camera will be able to catch all of you. No, you're in a tree.
Yeah, there you go.
So we're continuing to wait for the state to make some remarks in this case after Maxwell Anderson found guilty this morning on all 4 counts in the Milwaukee County courthouse there. This is these are the folks that make up the state prosecution there, going to speak about their part in this case before we move on to sentencing, which is now scheduled for August 15th. We can see the district attorney and the sheriff there as well. Let's listen in.
Except for, all right. You guys ready? All right, cool. All right, I'm James Burnett. I'm a spokesperson for the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office. I'm here with representatives from the Sheriff's Office, the Milwaukee Police Department, and of course the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office. As you might expect, these people have limited time today. The cases don't stop, so we'll have about 15 minutes. Several speakers, starting with District Attorney Kent Lovern, We'll close out with Sheriff Ball and have a few people in between. And with that, I will, one other thing, a little bit of housekeeping. Verdict may have been read, but this case is not over. So you can ask your questions. Not all of them may be answered, but ask away and we'll do what we can. With that, District Attorney Lovren, please.
Thank you, James. And good morning to all of you. First and foremost, I want to express our deepest sympathy to the family and loved ones of Sade Robinson. They've incurred a devastating loss that obviously occurred in a horrific manner, and they've had to carry this loss in a very public way now for over 14 months. And we are hopeful that this verdict brings some amount of solace to them. I want to express gratitude to the jurors who served in this case. We obviously are gratified by their verdict, obviously, because it is a just outcome in this case. But we are equally grateful for their service over 2 weeks, for their attention to this matter. And let's remember, jury service is among the highest level of civic responsibility any of us can be asked to take on. Juries are relied upon in the American justice system more than any place else in the world, and this is where members of our community have their highest amount of authority as they consider and decide cases. So we're very grateful for the jurors who served in this matter. I'm obviously very grateful to the superb law enforcement investigation that took place in this case. It was led by the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, and that team led by Detective Joanne Donner. Incredible work done here. As you heard through this trial, this was a very complex matter that took place in an investigation that spanned the entire county, and so required a great deal of meticulous and dedicated work. The Milwaukee Police Department played a big role in this investigation as well. We're grateful for their efforts. Assistant Chief Nicole Davila is here today, and I also want to express gratitude to all of the other law enforcement officials at the state, local, and federal level who participated in this investigation. It is important to know law enforcement in this county works very well together. That doesn't happen every place. It happens here in Milwaukee County, and for that, all of us in this community can be grateful. And finally, I want to thank our trial team. You know, the best prosecutors have a sharp mind and a big heart, and Ian Vance Curzan exhibits both of those at the highest level. Everyone saw that on full display during this trial, but what most people did not see was the hundreds of hours Ian has given to this case over the past 14 months in preparation for what happened in the courtroom over these past 2 weeks. Thank you to Deputy District Attorney Megan Newport, who also assisted with this case. She's a leader in our office, on our executive team. She has had an exemplary career already, supervising dozens of people while managing a caseload of some of the most violent crimes in our county. And I appreciate her efforts here. And I also want to personally thank Sarah Martinez, our victim witness advocate. Sarah is one of many such advocates in our office who have the challenging but rewarding task of guiding hurting members of our community through a justice system that can be complex, confusing, and unkind. And as she always does, Sarah did an exemplary job in this case, and we are all grateful for her work. Many others in our office contributed to the success of this prosecution, as with all of the other investigative agencies here. We all know these cases, especially the complex ones like this one, require a team effort across the board. And I can tell you, I've been part of this community for many, many years, and I'm grateful for the cooperation that we constantly see day in and day out through all of our public safety partners, and this case was no exception. I'm grateful for everyone's work in this matter and for the outcome today. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ian Vance Curzan.
Good morning, everybody. I'm kind of tired of talking, but I just want to repeat something Kent said, that this is, while we are satisfied with this verdict, our hearts go out to the family of Sade Robinson. This is a tragedy, and I'm just hopeful that this verdict can be a step towards healing for everybody that this has affected, particularly her family. I have to say that this investigation was extremely thorough, and the hours of work put into this by investigators from numerous agencies, the Sheriff's Office primarily, and the Milwaukee Police Department, as well as other local agencies, federal agencies, even one out-of-state agency. Everybody put together the case that you saw over the course of the past 2 weeks. It was It was an incredible effort by so many people, by so many dedicated members of the law enforcement community, and that's what you saw on display over the last 2 weeks. And the victim witness, Sarah, I can't thank you enough for the work you put in. You dedicated so much of your life to this case, and as the victim witness advocate staff in the district attorney's office really did that. I'm kind of at a loss for words here. It's been a long 2 weeks, but I just wanted to say those things, and yeah. And if there's any questions, or am I turning it over? Oh, yes. Detective Donner in particular, she was the lead, and she was incredible. I owe her so much.
Well, it wouldn't have happened without his amazing presentation in court. But yes, like everyone said, my heart goes out to the family and her friends and really the community at large. Everyone's come together, and it's hard to take that step back as a law enforcement officer and not get that emotionally involved during the case. But I will admit that I did go back to my office after the verdict and I had a good cry because I finally got to have that emotion. It does affect us too. And as I said at one point on the stand, that as the lead investigator, this wasn't me. I just was orchestrating. I was directing people where to go and what to do, and sometimes I felt a little lost. But without the rest of my team, every single detective we have worked on this. All of Milwaukee's homicide unit, many of their officers. We had the ATF, the FBI, Cudahy, Waukegan, and it really was a huge joint effort, and this would not have happened without all of us working together. So I'm looking forward to putting this past 14 months behind me. It's taken a long toll. It's been a very difficult road, but I was very pleased with today's verdict, and incredible to work with this prosecution team. It made it very easy. Ian was with me literally from day one, and that's why he knew this case inside and out. He was there every single step of the way. So, thank you.
Sure. I can take some questions, and so can
Detective Donner first. Can you summarize how many hours you spent on this case the last 14 months, and what was the most complex or challenging piece of this investigation from your perspective?
So, since these are the two people that assigned me my cases, they can probably attest that I have not been assigned pretty much any case for the past 14 months. It has been this case. So, whatever 40 plus hours a week has been on this case. I have lived and breathed it. Even on some of my off times, I would go down to Warnemont and I'd go up and down that beach, just hoping, right? The most difficult part is not asking myself constantly, did I miss anything? Is there anything that I overlooked? Being hard on myself, I think, was actually really the hardest part on this case.
Ian, when that verdict came down today and it was guilty on all 4 counts, your first thought was what?
Just how thankful I am to have the team that I have. Megan, Sarah, others in my office, and then also just what I said before, that hoping that this can be a time for Sade's family to move on to some healing. Now having a verdict after all these months, those were the first things I thought about.
What do you think it says about the swiftness of this deliberation? It took less than an hour.
I think it says that the investigation was incredibly well done. I'm not a participant in that. I just try to tell the jury what the facts are and let the facts speak the truth. And I think that when a case is investigated the way this one was investigated, the truth just spoke for it. I mean, the evidence just spoke for itself. That's all I can really say about that, and I think the jury saw that. There really wasn't much I needed to say in my closing argument, I felt like, just because of how much the jury had seen. They saw how thorough it was.
Ian, it seems that the presentation of your case that you and Megan did, you're trying to put together all these different pieces of evidence, all these different timelines, and make it consumable and understandable for a jury, especially when you're getting into very dry, technical evidence. how much time was spent on that, and how does that go towards what you think is the verdict that was reached today?
I mean, there were, you know, hours and hours of video that was poured through by many detectives, and that I've watched as well with them, and repeatedly watched that stuff. And the time put into that, all the videos, retrieving the videos, I mean, that's what defined the timeline and the routes that were taken, and that sort of thing, that allowed for a complete understanding of what happened throughout the day, the evening, and the early morning hours into the next day. There's countless hours spent reviewing video. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
there are 82 witnesses by our count that were called for your case. 68 members of law enforcement, 12 civilians, 2 non-law enforcement government workers, and Detective Donner, I think our track had you taking the stand the most times of that. Have you ever called that many witnesses in a case, or remember calling that many witnesses in a case, and purpose of that, I'm guessing, to lock in and try and carry that timeline forward?
I've never called that many witnesses. I can't speak for Megan. I think she may have before. But no, I've never called that many witnesses, but that was necessary to lock in the timeline and be very clear. Because one of the things when you're dealing with a case that involves such a large geographic range and a long timeline, it's going to require a lot of people to help explain all of that, and that's what we had here.
Ian, there was a lot of evidence in this case, but what would you consider to be the key piece of evidence that helped you prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt?
I'm not sure I really want to comment on that. I think the evidence spoke for itself, and I think if you watched the trial, everybody who watched the complete trial got to a moment where I think it got to that point, at some point. But
Detective Donner, can you just talk about the complexity of this case, having to deal with agencies from across the county, even spilling into Illinois?
So initially we ended up having daily briefings over at MPD, kind of get caught up on the aspects that they were working on, and then joining it up with what we were working on. Sorting out those tasks, thankfully it was easier than I thought it would be. You know, just letting them know, like, hey, we need video from this area, and I didn't have to worry about knowing it's going to get done. Same with my guys, just, you know, asking him to do unusual things like throw a pair of gloves off of a cliff. You know, no one questioned it, they just went ahead and did it. So it was having that trust and that confidence, mostly in the other agencies, that's what made this a lot easier for me to deal with.
And can you give us some perspective? I mean, this case came with no murder weapon, and the medical examiner not being able to determine how Sade Robinson actually died.
Right.
Have you ever worked a case like that, or can you just put it in perspective for us?
No, not at all. And that was increasingly frustrating, because that's where I went back to am I missing something? Am I overlooking something? You know, I knew in my gut that Maxwell Anderson was guilty. So I needed to figure out, how does this evidence show it? You know, but yeah, it was very hard to overcome some of that, but in the end, it's what I had. So that's what we had to go with.
Given the fact that we have 2 more speakers, 2 more questions.
Ian, last August we learned that the search warrant was unsealed, but a confidential informant had talked about this perhaps that Anderson mentioned a month before. Any reason that wasn't brought up or discussed?
I don't want to comment on that.
Any concerns during the past 9 days? Any times that you were less confident maybe than?
When you have a team like we had here, and support, family support, colleague support like we had, I was feeling confident mostly the entire time.
One more?
Was the circumstantial evidence in this case more powerful than having some of that other physical evidence?
I think I'd just let the verdict speak to that.
Hi, Assistant Chief Nicole Waldner of the Milwaukee Police Department. I oversee the Criminal Investigation Bureau,
I just wanted to thank my detectives, many of which are standing here, but it is just a fraction. If you watched any of the trial, you know how many people were involved in this. And as Detective Donner alluded to, it was continuous cooperation between our two agencies. In my time of 28 years working for Milwaukee Police, we've always worked with the sheriffs, but never ever has it been as seamless as it has this time. And the cooperation between the agencies and the hard work by both of them and the teamwork was amazing. And honestly, I feel like it's due to the dedication of Sheriff Ball and Chief Norman always working together, and it filters down. And without that leadership and saying, okay, do whatever you guys got to do to figure this out, it wouldn't have happened the way it did. And so I just really appreciate all the cooperation between, you know, sometimes it's hard to get a bunch of type A's and the personality, you know, type A personalities to work on something, but they all just took this case and nothing was more important than figuring it out. So I just wanted to publicly thank all of the detectives on both sides that worked on this case.
Is there anything that can be learned from this for the future? Any types of that cooperation or how a case like this might be, you know, like anything that can be gleaned from the last 14 months?
So we've always worked in cooperation, but you all know, being in Milwaukee, there has not been anything like this, right, since way back, right? So now we have a process, right? And I think it was the coordination between the two teams, and I feel like my feeling is this is how it's going to be. No matter what, if say something happens at the lakefront, this cooperation exists, and we're gonna do things together. Because honestly, with staffing, with crime, this is how it has to be for a community to have a law enforcement agencies that work well together. This is what it's going to be from now on.
Sheriff Ball.
Good morning. First, I'd like to start by extending condolences to the Robinson family. But I also want to commend and thank all who participated in the investigation of the death of Ms. Robinson, as well as those who participated in the trial. As you know, this was not the typical homicide or death investigation that we would normally have. It was not packaged up in a bow and all of that. It was a puzzle that they had to piece together what happened, figure out what happened, and then present a case that was coherent to the jury. And so I'm proud of the work that was done by everyone that is involved in this case. But on a personal note, I just want to say I'm proud of the men and women of the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, but also everyone that participated in this trial. The result was the result that we thought was fair. It was a guilty verdict. And so, I'm hoping that it would bring some semblance of peace to the family. And so as I wrap up, again, I want to, on behalf of the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, I want to extend the condolences not only to the family, but to the friends and to the community who have embraced the Robinson family. And, may this be the beginning of healing. Thank you.
So I think with that we'll conclude. And as my grandmother says, you don't have to go home, but we're done here.
And with this, the state can get some rest. It has been a long slog for them from those first days of April last year through the verdict this morning that came in shortly after 9 o'clock. That Maxwell Anderson was guilty on all counts against him. The state presenting a clear and convincing case to that jury that Maxwell Anderson did everything with which he was charged.
Yes, and we've been following this from this morning, that verdict coming in just after a brief moment, about a minute, of deliberation this morning, or potentially they deliberated yesterday for the brief time they had, guilty on all counts.
Pat Cafferty, thank you so much for joining us throughout the duration of the trial. We'll have a little more business to do with you in a bit, but we do appreciate your insight this last couple of weeks.
My pleasure.
And we appreciate you being with us. We're going to take a break here, be back at noon for continuous coverage of the case here, the guilty verdict in the homicide of Sade Robinson, Maxwell Anderson being found guilty of all 4 counts. A live picture from underneath Pizza Shuttle on Milwaukee's east side, where this Sade Robinson worked for many years, and this memorial has popped up there. People leaving fresh flowers throughout the trial, remembering her. Her mother said she will be remembered as an angel. We'll see you at noon.